The final battle began at the edge of the Void region where space itself seemed to be dying. Admiral Jinnah Song commanded the largest fleet ever assembled with ships from every surviving species, united under human tactical leadership. The Devourer home system was a nightmare of consumed stars and dead planets. They had eaten entire solar systems to fuel their war machine, leaving behind only darkness and the twisted remains of civilizations that had once flourished. Captain Min Ho Lee led the first wave of attacks against Devourer feeding stations. These massive structures were draining energy from the last surviving stars in the region. If they could be destroyed, the enemy fleet would lose its power source. Lee mining ship experience proved invaluable as he navigated through debris fields that stretched for millions of kilometers. His crew knew how to work in dangerous environments, and they used that knowledge to get close to targets that seemed impossible to reach. The feeding stations were defended by swarms of Devourer fighters, but human pilots had learned to use the debris as cover. They flew through fields of broken planets and destroyed ships like they were racing through an obstacle course. Dr. Tae Hyun Yoon biological research had finally revealed the Devourer's ultimate weakness. They had become so dependent on consuming other civilizations' achievements that they had lost their own capacity for growth and adaptation. This discovery meant that once humans understood how the Devourers fought, they would never be able to change their tactics. The enemy was trapped by their own success, locked into patterns of behavior that made them predictable. The main battle began when Admiral Song led her fleet directly toward the Devourer command vessels. The enemy responded exactly as human strategists had predicted, trying to surround and overwhelm the Alliance forces with superior numbers. But Song was ready for this. She had divided her fleet into dozens of small groups that attacked from every direction at once. The Devourers could not coordinate their response because they were being hit by too many separate forces. Lieutenant Colonel Wu Jin-kang volunteered for the most dangerous mission of the entire war. He would pilot a specially modified ship directly into the heart of the Devourer command network and deliver a weapon that would disrupt their collective consciousness. Kang's ship had no energy weapons, no shields, and no computer systems. It was powered by chemical rockets and controlled entirely by manual systems. The Devourer's sensors could barely detect it because there was almost nothing there to see. As Kang approached the enemy command vessel, he could see the true horror of what the Devourers had become. They were no longer individual beings, but parts of a single vast intelligence that consumed everything it touched. The final approach was the longest few minutes of Kang life. Enemy fire filled the space around his ship, but most of it missed because the Devourer targeting systems could not lock onto such a primitive vessel. When Kang's ship penetrated the command vessel outer hull, he found himself inside a nightmare of organic technology. The Devourers had merged with their machines so completely that it was impossible to tell where the creatures ended and the technology began. The weapon Kang carried was based on human understanding of individual consciousness. It would force the Devourers to remember what it felt like to be separate beings instead of parts of a collective mind. The explosion when Kang triggered the device was not visible from outside, but its effects spread through the entire Devourer network. Instantly, enemy ships throughout the galaxy suddenly stopped responding to central commands. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers experienced confusion and fear as individual emotions instead of shared thoughts. Their perfect coordination collapsed as millions of separate minds tried to think for themselves. Admiral Song's fleet pressed their advantage immediately. Human commanders led attacks on enemy formations that were suddenly disorganized and unable to work together. The same unity that had made the Devourers invincible now made them vulnerable. Captain Eugene Park led the final assault on the Devourer mothership. Her mixed crew of humans and aliens worked together like a single organism. Each species contributed their unique skills to overcome the enemy defenses. The battle inside the mothership was fought corridor by corridor, with humans leading alien soldiers through passages filled with dying Devourer technology. The enemy creatures were retreating in panic, unable to coordinate their defense. Dr. So young Park warp drives allowed Alliance reinforcements to arrive just when they were needed. Most fresh fleets appeared throughout the battle zone as human logistics coordinators managed the largest military operation in galactic history. The turning point came when Sergeant Min Young SEO led a team that captured the Devourer Central Communication Hub. By taking control of their own network, she was able to send confusing orders to enemy fleets across the galaxy. Devourer forces that had been winning battles suddenly received orders to retreat. Ships that were supposed to defend important positions were told to attack their own allies. The network that had been their greatest strength became their weakness. The final victory came not with a massive explosion, but with a gradual collapse as Devourer fleets throughout the galaxy stopped fighting. Enemy ships drifted powerless in space as their crews struggled to understand what it meant to be individuals. The war was over, but the galaxy was forever changed. Species that had been enemies for millennia had learned to work together under human leadership. The greatest civilizations had discovered that true strength came from cooperation, not domination. In the aftermath of victory, Captain Eugene Park was elected as the first Human Council president. Her first act was to establish the Galactic Defense Academy, where human military instructors would train officers from all species. The academy would teach the lessons humans had learned during the war: how to adapt when technology fails, how. The Galactic Council chambers had been dark for 8 months since the Devourers captured the ancient station. Captain Ji Hoon Bae led an assault force of volunteers from every free species, but the plan depended entirely on human knowledge of the station. Forgotten maintenance tunnels. Bae had studied the original construction blueprints, while most aliens relied on computer maps that showed only the main corridors. The humans knew about service shafts and repair tunnels that were too small and primitive for the Devourers to bother guarding. Sergeant Min Young SEO crawled through a ventilation shaft that had not been used in decades. Her team carried simple explosives and mechanical tools that would not trigger the advanced sensors the Devourers had installed throughout the station. The rescue mission was more than just saving trapped council members. It had become a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy. If humans could liberate the most heavily defended Devourer position, then no enemy stronghold was truly safe inside the station. CO made a discovery that changed everything. The Devourers had been using the Council communication network to coordinate their attacks across the galaxy. They were intercepting all Alliance messages and using the information to plan counterattacks, but SEO realized this network could work both ways. If humans could take control of the communication system, they could feed false information to Devourer forces throughout the galaxy. The enemy would receive fake orders that would confuse and scatter their fleets. The battle for the council chambers lasted 14 hours. Human soldiers fought room by room through corridors filled with Devourer warriors. The aliens they were rescuing could barely believe that humans were winning battles in the heart of enemy territory. Ambassador Vorthak was one of the council members trapped in the secure bunker. When the human rescue team broke through the final barriers, he could not speak for several minutes. This was the same Zephyrian who had made jokes about human weakness at the beginning of the war. Commander Hyun-woo Kim personally carried the wounded ambassador to safety while Devourer energy beams cut through the air around them. Vorthak would never forget that a human had risked his life to save someone who had once mocked his entire species. The liberation of the council chambers sent shock waves through both sides of the war. The Alliance world celebrated their first major symbolic victory, while Devourer forces began to doubt whether they were truly invincible. Dr. So Young Park finally completed her revolutionary warp drive design while working in a hidden laboratory on a mining station. Her new engine was simpler than alien technology, but far more reliable, especially in the electromagnetic chaos that surrounded Devourer fleets. Spark drive could power ships through hyperspace even when enemy jamming systems were trying to disrupt their navigation. This gave Alliance fleets the mobility they needed to strike at Devourer positions and escape before reinforcements could arrive. The first major counteroffensive began with coordinated strikes on 7 Devourer strongholds simultaneously. Each attack was led by human commanders who had learned to think like their enemy while maintaining their own innovative edge. General Kim commanded the assault on the Centauri fortress complex. The Devourers had turned the system into a massive weapon factory that produced the dark ships used throughout their fleet. Destroying it would cripple enemy production for months. The Attack succeeded because humans had taught their alien allies to be unpredictable. Captain Eugene Park led her ships in a spiral pattern that confused Devourer targeting systems, while Admiral Lim launched surprise attacks from inside asteroid fields. Engineer Dayun Choi modifications to Alliance weapons proved crucial in these battles. Her improvements made energy weapons more efficient while reducing their detectable signatures. This allowed Allied ships to hit harder while staying partially invisible to Devourer sensors. The coordinated strikes succeeded beyond all expectations. 6 of the 7 targets were completely destroyed, and the 7th was badly damaged. The Devourers lost more strategic positions in one day than they had in the entire previous year of fighting. Species throughout the galaxy watched in amazement as human-led forces won victory after victory. The same tactics that alien military experts had called primitive and stupid were proving more effective than thousands of years of advanced warfare theory. The hegemony worlds were liberated in a series of lightning-fast raids that caught the Devourers completely off guard. Human commanders used fake retreat tactics to lure enemy fleets into ambush while their real forces attacked undefended targets. Captain J. Min-O became a legend when he successfully captured an intact Devourer command vessel. His team boarded the enemy ship using nothing but magnetic boots and cutting torches while the vessel was still in combat. The intelligence gathered from the captured ship revealed the location of major Devourer supply bases and showed weaknesses in their command structure that human strategists could exploit in future battles. But the most important discovery was psychological. The Devourers were starting to fear human unpredictability. They had begun changing their own tactics to counter human innovations, which meant they were no longer fighting as efficiently as before. Dr. Tae Hyun analysis of captured Devourer technology showed that the enemy was trying to develop defenses against kinetic weapons and chaotic battle tactics, but their solutions were based on technological fixes that humans could work around. The Alliance grew stronger with each victory. Alien species that had never trusted each other learned to fight as a united force under human leadership. The shared experience of battle created bonds that had never existed before. Young Lieutenant Seok Jin Han trained mixed-species fighter squadrons that became known as the Chaos Wings. These pilots learned to fly in completely random patterns that made it impossible for Devourer computers to predict their movements. The Wings became famous throughout the galaxy for missions that should have been impossible. They rescued survivors from deep behind enemy lines, destroyed targets that were supposed to be invulnerable, and won battles against overwhelming odds. The Battle of the Binary Stars became the turning point of the entire war. Human Admiral Ne Young Lim faced the largest Devourer fleet ever assembled with forces that were outnumbered 10-1. Lim's strategy was so radical that even human officers questioned her sanity. She planned to attack the enemy fleet from inside a stellar plasma storm that would disable most electronic systems on both sides. The battle was fought almost entirely with manual controls and visual targeting. Both humans and aliens had to rely on their own skills instead of computer assistance. The Devourers, who had become completely dependent on their technology, were helpless in these conditions. When the plasma storm cleared 12 hours later, the massive Devourer fleet had been destroyed. The Alliance lost many ships, but they had proven that human tactics could win even the most impossible battles. The victory at Binary Stars convinced the last neutral species to join the Alliance. The Eternal Archives, the Voidwalkers, and even the mysterious Omega Collective declared their support for the human-led resistance, but intelligence reports showed that the Devourers were preparing for one final massive assault. They were gathering every remaining ship in their fleet for an attack on the Alliance capital worlds. The enemy knew they were losing the war and had decided to gamble everything on one last desperate offensive. If they could destroy the Alliance leadership and break the spirit of the free worlds, they might still win. General Kim received orders to prepare for the largest space battle in galactic history. Every available ship would be needed for the defense, and there was no guarantee that even human tactics could overcome such overwhelming numbers. The Alliance had proven that courage and innovation could defeat superior technology, but the final test would push human leadership to its absolute limits. The fate of every free species in the galaxy would be decided in the battle to come in. Refugee camps and military bases across Alliance space, humans continued teaching aliens how to fight like humans, how to think for themselves, and how to never give up hope. The cosmic joke had become the galaxy's greatest inspiration, but the hardest test was still ahead. The final battle would determine whether human values could truly change the course of galactic history. General In-ho Kim stood on the bridge of his command ship, looking out at the strangest fleet ever assembled. His ships were a mix of human vessels, alien warships, and converted cargo haulers, all painted with the same symbol, a simple circle representing unity against the darkness. Kim had been promoted from waste disposal captain to military leader in just 6 months. The aliens who once laughed at him now followed his orders without question. They had learned that human leadership meant the difference. Between victory and death, the fleet was heading to the Vega system, where Devourer forces had established a major base. The enemy had been using the system to launch attacks deeper into galactic territory. If Kim could destroy this base, it would give the free worlds time to prepare better defenses. Dr. Haewon Cho watched from the science section as her new weapons were loaded onto the ships. Her team had created something the galaxy had never seen before: ghost ships that ran on almost no power. These vessels could sneak past Devourer sensors because they had nothing for the enemy to detect. The ghost ships looked like pieces of space junk from the outside, but inside they carried crews of volunteers ready to die for their cause. The ships had no shields, no computers, and no energy weapons, just humans with explosive charges and the courage to get close to enemy vessels. Admiral Na Young Lim commanded the main battle group. Her strategy was something alien military schools would have called insane. She planned to attack the Devourers using pure chaos, with no coordination between ships and no overall battle plan. Aliens in her fleet were terrified by this approach. They had been trained to fight in perfect formations, with every move planned in advance, but Lim explained that the Devourers expected that kind of fighting. They were ready for organized attacks, but not for complete madness. When the battle began, the human ships scattered in all directions like startled birds. Some attacked the main Devourer fleet, while others went after support vessels. A few ships flew straight at enemy motherships, planning to ram them at full speed. The Devourers tried to coordinate their response, but they could not predict what the chaotic human fleet would do next. Every time they focused on one group of attackers, another group would hit them from an unexpected angle. Captain Jae-min-oh led one of the ramming attacks. His ship was loaded with every explosive device the humans could find. When he crashed into a Devourer cruiser, the explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Both ships were destroyed, but the psychological effect was enormous. The aliens in the fleet watched in amazement as human after human made similar sacrifices. They began to understand something about humanity that they had never seen before. Humans were willing to die, not just for their own species, but for anyone who fought beside them. Lieutenant Colonel Wu Jin-kang had studied the Devourer ships carefully and found their biggest weakness. The enemy vessels were designed to absorb and redirect energy, but they had never evolved defenses against purely physical attacks. His modified fighters carried no energy weapons at all. Instead, they used magnetic launchers to fire metal spears at incredible speeds. The spears punched through Devourer armor like it was made of paper because the enemy ships had no way to absorb kinetic energy. The battle lasted for 18 hours. And ended with the complete destruction of the Devourer base. The enemy lost more ships in this one fight than in all their previous battles combined. The Free Worlds had won their first major victory, but the cost was terrible. Nearly half the human ships were destroyed and thousands of brave people died in the attack. The aliens who survived the battle finally understood what human courage really meant. It was not about being fearless, it was about being afraid and fighting anyway. News of the victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Worlds that had been preparing for extinction suddenly saw hope. The species that had been treated as a cosmic joke had just saved galactic civilization from its greatest threat. The crystalline homeworld was the next major battle. The planet was already half consumed by Devourer forces when Admiral Lim arrived with her mixed fleet. The crystalline beings had been masters of energy manipulation for millions of years, but they were helpless against enemies that fed on energy. Lim fleet used the same chaotic tactics that had worked at Vega, but this time they had support from the planet's surface. Human advisors had taught the crystalline defenders how to fight using physical weapons instead of their traditional energy blasts. The liberation of the crystal cities became a symbol of hope across the galaxy. Images of human soldiers fighting alongside alien civilians were broadcast to every free world. People who had never believed in cooperation between species saw it happening before their eyes. Young pilot Sang-hoon Ko became famous when he successfully destroyed 3 Devourer motherships in a single battle. His secret was flying so unpredictably that even his own allies could not guess what he would do next. The Devourers certainly had no chance of predicting his moves. Ko tactics were studied by military academies throughout the galaxy, but most alien pilots could not copy his style. They had been trained to follow rules and procedures. While Ko fought purely on instinct and creativity, the Devourers began to adapt to human tactics. They started using different attack patterns and developed new defenses against kinetic weapons, but they were still thinking like a technological civilization. Trying to solve problems with better engineering. Dr. Yoon by Shin discovered why the Devourers could not truly adapt to human methods. They had become so dependent on consuming other civilizations' technology that they had lost the ability to innovate. On their own, they could copy and improve existing designs, but they could not create something completely new. This weakness gave the human-led alliance a continuing advantage. As long as humans kept changing their tactics and trying new approaches, the Devourers would always be one step behind. The liberation of the Outer Rim territories took 6 months of constant fighting. Human-led fleets moved from system to system, freeing worlds that had been under Devourer control. The pattern was always the same: chaotic attacks that confused the enemy, followed by ground forces that fought like guerrilla warriors. Captain Min-ho Lee led many of these ground operations. His experience in difficult environments made him perfect for fighting on ruined worlds. His teams learned to use the wreckage of destroyed cities as weapons, turning the Devourer's own destruction against them. The aliens who fought alongside humans began to change. They learned to think for themselves instead of relying on computers to make decisions. They discovered that fear could make them stronger if they used it correctly. They found courage they never knew they had. Species that had been enemies for centuries started working together under human leadership. The Zephyrians and Crystalline Empire put aside ancient grudges to fight beside each other. The Silicon Collective shared technology with the energy beings for the first time in galactic history, but the Devourers were not finished. They still controlled the core systems of the galaxy, and their main fleet was larger than anything the Alliance could assemble. The final battles would require something more than clever tactics and human courage. General Kim knew that winning individual battles was not enough. The Alliance needed to strike at the heart of Devourer power and destroy their ability to coordinate attacks across the galaxy. This would mean finding their home base and fighting the enemy where they were strongest. Intelligence reports suggested the Devourer command center was located in the Void region, a part of space where they had consumed entire star systems to fuel their war machine. No one had ever returned from that area of space alive, but humans had proven that impossible things could be accomplished with enough determination. The species that had once been the galaxy's biggest joke was preparing for the most important battle in galactic history. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and everything depended on whether human leadership could inspire the free worlds to attempt something that looked like certain suicide. The Alliance would need every ship, every weapon, and every brave soul willing to fight for freedom. In the darkness between the stars, the Devourers were preparing their own final assault. They had learned to fear human unpredictability, but they still believed their superior numbers and technology would win the war. They were about to discover just how wrong they could be. The evacuation of Zephyria Prime was supposed to be impossible. The planet was surrounded by Devourer scouts, and most alien rescue ships had already fled in terror. But Captain Eugene Park refused to leave without trying to save the civilians. Still trapped on the surface, her human crew agreed, even though they knew it might be a suicide mission. The Zephyrian refugees could not believe what they were seeing. Humans were risking their lives to save people who had spent years making jokes about their species. Captain Park landed her ship in the middle of a burning city, while Devourer energy beams cut through the sky around them. Ambassador Kelthorn had been one of the aliens who laughed loudest at human stupidity during council meetings. Now he watched human soldiers carry injured Zephyrians to safety while buildings collapsed around them. The humans shared their food and medical supplies with species that had always considered them inferior. When a Devourer attack ship found their landing zone, the human crew did something that shocked the alien survivors. They stayed to fight instead of running away. Captain Park used her ship to ram the enemy vessel while her crew escaped in smaller craft. The aliens had never seen such courage before. Yun Bai Shin was working day and night in her laboratory studying pieces of destroyed Devourer ships. The dark metal was unlike anything in the galactic databases, but she was starting to understand how it worked. The creatures did not just use technology, they actually ate it. Working with engineer Dongwook Nam, she discovered that the Devourers absorbed energy from any advanced system they encountered. The more sophisticated the technology, the more power they could drain from it. This explained why the greatest civilizations fell the fastest. The breakthrough came when Dr. Shin tested simple mechanical devices against Devourer metal fragments. The alien technology reacted strongly to energy weapons and computer systems. But when she hit it with a basic hammer, the material just sat there doing nothing. It was like the Devourers could not even see primitive tools. This discovery spread quickly through the human research network. If the enemy fed on advanced technology, then maybe humans could fight them using older, simpler methods. Weapons that shot metal bullets instead of energy beams, engines that used chemical fuel instead of antimatter. Reactors. Commander Haiwan Lee was the first to test this theory in real combat. She took a fleet of modified mining ships against a group of Devourer vessels near the Rigel system. Instead of using standard weapons, her ships fired chunks of metal at high speed and set off chemical explosives. The results were amazing. The Devourers seemed confused by attacks they could not absorb or redirect. Their dark ships took real damage for the first time since the invasion began. One enemy vessel was completely destroyed when Lee's ship rammed it using pure kinetic force. News of this victory traveled faster than light to every corner of the galaxy. For the first time since the attacks began, someone had actually hurt the Devourers. The same species that everyone had mocked was suddenly the center of galactic attention. Lieutenant Seok Jin Han found himself training alien pilots in what they called primitive combat techniques. He taught them how to fly ships manually when computers failed, how to navigate using stars instead of GPS systems, and how to fight when all their advanced gadgets stopped working. The aliens struggled with these lessons. They had grown up depending on machines to do their thinking for them. When Han told a crystalline pilot to aim a weapon by looking through a simple sight instead of using targeting computers, the aliens said it was impossible, but slowly some of them started to learn. The ones who survived their first battles against Devourers were the ones who remembered Han lessons about thinking for themselves and not trusting their technology to solve every problem. Captain Min-Ho Lee became a hero when he led a successful rescue mission to the Spiral Nebula Research Station. The facility was surrounded by Devourer ships, but Lee crew used an old trick from human military history. They hid their ships inside hollow asteroids and drifted past the enemy sensors. The alien scientists they rescued included some of the galaxy's smartest minds. These researchers had been working on weapons to fight the Devourers, but all their advanced designs had failed. When they saw how humans succeeded using simple methods, they started asking different questions. Dr. Haewon Cho began working with these rescued scientists to develop new weapons based on human principles instead of building more powerful energy guns. They created devices that used basic physics in clever ways: magnetic launchers that threw metal spears, explosive devices that used chemical reactions. The first major test came during the battle for the Andorian colonies. 3 human ships led by Commander Hyun-Woo Kim faced off against a Devourer squadron. Everyone expected the humans to be destroyed quickly, but Kim had learned from the earlier victories. His ships attacked in ways the Devourers did not expect. Instead of fighting in neat formations, they scattered and attacked from all directions. They used ramming speed and explosion tactics that no advanced civilization would consider. They fought like pirates instead of like proper military forces. The confused Devourers tried to drain energy from weapons that had no energy to drain. They attempted to hack computer systems that were controlled by human hands and eyes. They could not adapt to fighting methods that seemed completely random and primitive. When The battle ended, 2 Devourer ships were destroyed, and the rest had retreated for the first time since the invasion began. The Andorian colonists cheered for their human rescuers. These were the same humans they had ignored for years. More aliens started paying attention to human tactics. Species that had dismissed humanity as backward began asking human advisors for help. The galaxy was learning that sometimes old-fashioned courage and creativity could beat the most advanced technology. Young pilot Sang-hun Ko volunteered for the most dangerous mission, yet he would take a small ship and try to get inside a Devourer mothership. The plan was to plant explosives in the enemy vessel core, but what he found inside changed everything. The Devourers were not just monsters, they were the remains of an ancient civilization that had achieved perfect harmony with technology. But something had gone wrong, and they had become addicted to consuming the achievements of other species. They could not create anymore, only destroy and absorb. This discovery explained why they were so good at fighting advanced civilizations, but helpless against human tactics. They had forgotten how to adapt and innovate on their own when faced with unexpected methods. They could not figure out new solutions. Ko managed to plant his explosives and escape, but more importantly, he brought back information that human strategists could use. The Devourers had weaknesses that could be exploited if humans were clever enough to find them. The galaxy was changing. Worlds that had been written off as lost were suddenly being defended by human-led fleets. Species that had never worked together were learning to fight side by side under human command. The cosmic joke had become the galaxy's greatest hope, but the real war was just beginning. The Devourers were starting to adapt to human tactics, and they had resources that stretched across half the galaxy. The next phase of the conflict would test whether human determination could overcome an enemy that had already consumed thousands of worlds. In refugee camps and military bases across free space, humans were teaching aliens how to think like fighters instead of like users of advanced technology. The lessons were hard, and many aliens failed to learn them, but those who succeeded became part of something new. A galactic resistance was being born, led by the species everyone had underestimated. It would take more than clever tactics to win this war. It would take the kind of courage that only comes from people who have learned to survive when everything goes wrong. The first warning signs came from the edge of the galaxy, where the stars were far apart and space was mostly empty. Admiral Jin Song was working at her desk on Kepler Station when the emergency messages started coming in. One by one, the monitoring stations out there stopped talking to anyone. The messages were strange and scary. The last signals from each station were always the same: confused reports about ships that seemed to appear from nowhere, then silence that went on forever. Admiral Jin Song had been a soldier for many years, and she knew when something was very wrong. Dr. Taehyun Yoon was studying alien life forms in his research ship near the outer edge of space where these strange things were happening. His instruments picked up energy readings that made no sense at all. The computer could not match them with anything in the galactic databases that contained information about every known technology. When Dr. Yoon tried to report what he found to the Galactic Council, the alien officials just looked at his data and shook their heads. They said humans always worried too much about small problems. They told him his readings were probably just equipment errors or maybe solar storms, but the problems were not small, and they were getting bigger. The attacks started 3 weeks after the first stations went silent. Massive ships that looked like they were made of solid darkness came out of empty space without any warning. Their hulls seemed to swallow light itself, making them almost impossible to see until they were already shooting. Captain Jae-min was carrying supplies to an alien mining colony when he saw the first real attack happen. The dark ships appeared around the planet like hungry wolves. Surrounding a campfire, the colony had powerful shields and weapons that could destroy normal ships easily, but nothing they did seemed to hurt the attackers. In less than 6 hours, the entire planet was dead. The dark ships had somehow drained all the energy from the colony, leaving behind empty buildings and floating bodies in space. Captain watched from his hiding spot behind an asteroid as the mysterious attackers finished their work and disappeared back into the darkness. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was chaos like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were suddenly scared for their lives. Representatives screamed at each other in dozens of different languages. While their homeworlds burned, the Zephyrians blamed the Crystalline Empire for bringing this curse upon the galaxy. The Silicon Collective accused the energy beings of doing experiments that had gone wrong. Everyone pointed fingers at everyone else while more and more worlds went silent on the communication network's engineer Wu Jin. Kang was watching the meeting from the human section, trying to make sense of all the angry voices. But he noticed something that none of the panicking aliens had figured out yet. The attackers were not choosing their targets randomly. They were hitting the most advanced civilizations first. The worlds with the biggest cities and the most powerful technology were always the first ones to fall. The places with the strongest shields and the most dangerous weapons could not defend themselves at all. It was like the dark ships were attracted to advanced technology like moths drawn to bright lights. This gave Wu Jin an idea that scared and excited him. At the same time, what if the reason these attackers were so successful was because they fed on the very things that made civilizations powerful? What if advanced technology was not protection but actually made worlds into bigger targets while the aliens argued and blamed each other? More bad news kept coming in. The attackers had a name now. The few survivors who escaped called them Devourers because they seemed to eat everything they touched. Planets, weapons, ships, and even the life force of living beings all got consumed by the dark enemies. The Devourers moved through space like a plague, destroying everything in their path. Worlds that had never known war suddenly found themselves fighting for survival. Alien species that had lived in peace for centuries were learning what terror felt like. Captain Min-Ho Lee got new orders to help evacuate civilians from worlds under attack. His garbage ship was not built for rescue missions, but he and his human crew worked day and night to save as many people as they could. The aliens they rescued were shocked that humans would risk their lives for species that had always treated them badly. Dr. So Young Park studied the reports from every attack, looking for patterns that might help her understand the enemy. She noticed that the Devourers always targeted power plants first, then communication centers, then military bases. It was like they knew exactly how to break down a civilization piece by piece. What worried her most was how fast the attacks happened. Advanced alien fleets that should have been able to fight for days or weeks were destroyed in hours. The Devourers seemed to know exactly how alien technology worked and exactly how to defeat it. Engineer Dayun Choi had a terrible thought while she was working on ship repairs. What if her secret modifications to alien technology had somehow attracted these attackers? But then she realized that the attacks had started in places where humans had never been. The Devourers were not hunting humans, they were hunting advanced technology itself. The pattern became clear when 3 more major worlds fell in a single day. The hegemony capital with its reality-bending weapons was consumed in 4 hours. The synthesis homeworld with computers that could predict the future lasted only 6 hours. The ancient ones who had technology older than most stars were destroyed in 2 hours each. Civilization had been more advanced than the last, and each one had fallen faster. It was like the Devourers got stronger every time they consumed another world. Their dark ships grew bigger, and their attacks became more coordinated with each victory. Dr. Tae Hyun-yoon made another discovery while studying debris from destroyed Devourer scouts. The creatures were not just using advanced technology, they were somehow made of it. Their ships and their bodies seemed to be constructed from the same energy that powered alien civilizations. This meant they could absorb and use any technology they encountered. The more advanced a weapon was, the easier it was for them to turn it against its owners. They were like a virus that infected technology itself, turning the galaxy's greatest strengths into weaknesses. Admiral Jin Song realized that conventional military thinking would not work against these enemies. Every strategy that had worked in normal wars would probably make things worse. The Devourers expected their enemies to use advanced weapons and shields, and they were ready for those tactics. But what if someone fought them using methods they did not expect? What if instead of using the most advanced technology available, someone used simple, crude weapons that the Devourers might not understand? How do you fight an enemy that feeds on the very tools you would normally use to fight the humans? Began to understand something that the panicking aliens could not see yet. Humanity greatest weakness, according to the galactic community, might actually be their greatest strength. The same primitive technology that aliens laughed at might be invisible to enemies that hunted advanced civilizations. As more worlds fell and more species fled their homes, the galaxy began to realize that their old ways of thinking were not going to save them. The greatest military minds in known space were helpless against an enemy that turned their own strength against them. But in the human sections of refugee ships and emergency shelters, people were starting to whisper about different kinds of solutions. They talked about fighting like their ancestors had fought, with courage and determination instead of relying on machines to do everything for them. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson that humans had never forgotten. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that knows exactly how strong you think you are and uses that strength to destroy you. The cosmic joke was about to become something much more serious. The giant meeting hall was full of strange sounds that day. Alien creatures from all over the galaxy were making noises that humans had learned meant laughter. The sounds came from beings with tentacles instead of arms, creatures made of pure energy, and others that looked like walking crystals. All of them were looking at the big screen in front of them, and all of them thought what they saw was very funny. On that screen was a small blue planet called Earth. The planet looked tiny compared to the massive alien worlds. These creatures came from Commander Hyun Woo. Kim stood in the human section of the hall watching as ambassador. Vorthak pointed at his homeworld with one of his long tentacles. The alien had green skin and 6 eyes that all seemed to be laughing at the same time. This is what humans call advanced civilization, Vorthak said in a voice that sounded like water bubbling. The other aliens made more laughing sounds as the screen showed pictures of human cities. Look at these small buildings they make. Look at how they still burn old dead plants and animals to make energy. They are like children playing with mud. Dr. So Young Park stood next to Hyun Woo. Her hands were tight on the metal rail in front of her. She had worked for many years to build the first human ship that could travel faster than light. But when she showed it to the aliens, they just smiled and patted her head like she was a little girl who had drawn a picture the Galactic Council had made Earth a member of their group 3 years ago. But it was not because they respected humans, it was because they thought humans were funny. The council liked to have humans around because watching them try to do things was entertaining for the advanced alien races. Your species is so amusing, said Counselor Zeph, making a sound like wind chimes. The creature was made of floating metal pieces that moved around each other. You fight wars over water when we can make oceans appear with our machines. You dig holes in the ground looking for energy when we harvest power from stars themselves. Captain Min Ho Lee was not in the council hall that day. He was far away in space commanding a human garbage ship. The aliens gave humans jobs like cleaning up their trash and digging rocks out of space because these were jobs that no other species wanted to do. Min Ho and his crew worked hard every day picking up the waste that alien civilizations left behind. The aliens never said thank you for this work. They barely noticed humans existed except when they wanted to laugh at them. But Min Ho noticed something that the aliens did not see. Humans were good at fixing things. When they broke, humans could make old machines work again using parts from other broken machines. Aliens just threw things away and made new ones when something stopped working. In the shipyards above Mars, young engineer Dayun Choi was supposed to be doing simple maintenance work on alien ships, but when no one was looking, she studied how the alien machines worked. She took them apart carefully and put them back together again. Each time she found ways to make them work better. The aliens never checked her work carefully. They thought humans were too stupid to understand their technology, so Dayun kept making small changes that made the ships faster and stronger. She fixed problems that the aliens did not even know existed. But she was careful to hide what she was doing back in the council hall. Ambassador Vorthak was still making jokes about humans. The screen now showed human soldiers training for war. The alien delegates laughed harder when they saw humans practicing with simple weapons that shot metal bullets instead of energy beams. They still fight with these primitive projectile weapons. Vorthak said they have not learned to use plasma or laser technology properly. They march around in lines like insects and make loud noises to scare their enemies. What the aliens did not understand was that human soldiers learned to fight in many different ways. Humans practiced with old weapons and new weapons. They learned to fight when their advanced machines broke down. They learned to win battles even when they had less technology than their enemies. Counselor Zeph made another wind chime sound. We gave them basic space travel because we felt sorry for them. But look what they do with it. They use our gift to collect garbage and dig in asteroid fields. They could never create anything truly advanced on their own. Dr. So young Park wanted to speak up. She wanted to tell them about all the improvements humans had made to alien technology. She wanted to explain how human scientists had found better ways to do things, but she knew the aliens would not listen. They had already decided that humans were not smart enough to matter. The meeting went on for hours with more jokes and more laughter. The aliens talked about how humans still got sick and died while many alien species lived forever. They laughed about how humans needed to eat food while energy beings could live on starlight alone. They made fun of how humans showed emotions instead of thinking with pure logic. Commander Hyun-woo Kim listened to it all. He had been a soldier on Earth before humans learned about alien civilizations. He had fought in wars and seen humans do impossible things when they had to. But these aliens had never seen humans when they were really pushed to their limits. They had only seen humans trying to fit in with galactic society. The worst part was not the laughter itself. It was knowing that some of what the aliens said was true. Humans did still fight small wars on Earth while aliens had peace across whole galaxies. Humans did still struggle with diseases that aliens had cured long ago. Human technology was thousands of years behind what these creatures used every day. But humans had something the aliens had forgotten. They remembered what it was like to struggle. They knew how to keep fighting when everything went wrong. They could work together when they had to, and they never gave up even when things looked hopeless. As the meeting finally ended, the aliens went back to their advanced worlds to live their easy lives. They would eat food made by machines, sleep in beds that floated in the air, and travel between stars. Like humans took buses between cities. They had everything they wanted, and they had never known what it felt like to really need something. The humans went back to their garbage ships and mining stations and maintenance jobs. They kept working quietly while the galaxy laughed at them. None of the aliens bothered to watch what humans were really doing. None of them cared enough to look closely at human innovations. Dr. So young Park returned to her laboratory to keep working on her faster-than-light engine. Dayun Choi went back to her secret improvements of alien technology. Captain Min Ho Lee continued cleaning up after civilizations that thought they were better than his species. And Commander Hyun-woo Kim began thinking about what would happen if the galaxy ever faced a real threat. The aliens were so sure of their superiority that they had stopped learning how to fight. They had grown soft living with their advanced technology. They had forgotten that sometimes the best solutions come from those who have to struggle for everything they get. But humans remembered what struggle felt like, and soon the galaxy would learn that the species they thought was a joke might be the only thing standing between them and complete destruction. The laughter would stop, and the jokes would end when the real test began. For now, though, the aliens kept laughing and humans kept working. And in the darkness between the stars, something else was watching and waiting.